I would like to take on the transition from Harbaugh to Sherrone Moore. It was no big surprise. I think it all laid out for us. He was the choice for the final 3 games. They won the final 3 games. He cried. They won. So that worked out, I guess, and it certainly did. Yes. So Kevin, Sherrone Moore's the choice.
Michigan lied and Sherrone cried. I'm going to file that one away for some point. But yeah, it was the logical choice in terms of not seeing your program going through an internal gutting the way that Alabama did, making the internal hire. I mean, Sherrone did coach several games this season, served his own suspension. So that's pretty interesting that a coach that served a suspension was elevated to the permanent full-time big doggy head coach. I don't think that happens all that often. Michigan, pure Michigan. I don't know how well. I mean, we don't always see internal hires work out. I think Ohio State fans will be the first ones. Well, Urban tapped Ryan, and we haven't won anything since then. So, I'm not exactly going to go there, but Larry Coker certainly is one of those internal hires that we can all, draw from history of where that went. I think the biggest thing is that Jesse Minter is following Jim Harbaugh out to California. The strength coach of Michigan is following Jim Harbaugh out to California. And I think that people were probably more upset about that one than anything, because it feels like Harbaugh is burning the boats as he goes out west. And, I think Michigan fans thought that this was going to be okay, here's your Laurel and hearty handshake and off you go, and you'll leave everything else in place. And dynasty, here we come. And I think the very real response now is coming in is that, oh, gee, we're maybe not as deep as we thought we were. So I don't know. I'll be very interested to see where we are at the final weekend in November, and where Ohio State and Michigan are. And we already know a lot of the implied stakes that are going to be on the line there, because if Ohio State can't do it this year, ooh, Nelly, it's going to be a rough offseason, I'll say that.
Steve, any thoughts on the big transition up north?
Well, it's going to be a struggle, I think, and the biggest issue is as everyone said, this is going to be the greatest NFL draft ever for Michigan people, like 14, 15 guys chosen or whatever. And to me, who's coaching them is important. For the overall arc and the trajectory of the program, you've got to recruit, you got to hire great people, and for the overall long-term health of the Michigan program, those are the areas that need to be addressed. So the jury's out. Is Sherrone Moore going to sign top 10 classes, top 15 classes? Is he going to hire the best assistants that money can buy to help him keep Michigan on top? And I don't think we know the answers to those questions. Those are going to come out over time. I think it doesn't help that Harbaugh is taking people with him to the NFL, but you get a chance to go work in the NFL. Certainly that's where you would go. 9 times out of 10. I mean, it depends if you're a position coach in the NFL and you have a chance to be a coordinator at Michigan. What do you do? I mean, those are similar type jobs, maybe even similar type paying jobs. I don't know. So, any rate, I think the long term it's kind of murky, because you honestly can't say whether he's going to have the staying power to build this thing and continue to build this thing, because again, a lot of it's like you're building like one of those Jenga things, and you're stacking blocks on top of one another, but they've pulled out Minner, and he was one of the key blocks at the bottom of that pyramid. And they're pulling out the strength coach, and he was one of the key blocks at the bottom of that pyramid, and Corum and McCarthy. And, you keep pulling blocks out, enough blocks come out of that, eventually the thing tumbles. And so unless you have just as sturdy a block to shove in that spot, Donovan Edwards, takes on a little bit more of a role, or, whatever, as you kind of, and my names and whatever, the names aren't all that important. It's the impact of the people is what's important. And Harbaugh had a group of people, we can joke about the cheating all we want, but, they wanted a high level, cheating, no cheating. They wanted a reasonably high level and did things that, nobody at Michigan has done, before or since, so it to me, in the modern era, I mean, this is, the highest point Michigan's ever been, even higher than 97, I think. So, I guess I just want to wait and see on him. You have to be a little bit skeptical because there aren't many people who've, stepped in and taken over a program like this and maintained it. And so, I guess we'll see. But, I mean, Kirby Smart, is a guy that stepped in and took Georgia even to greater heights, after he was given that chance. So I guess give the guy a chance and see what happens. I'm not overly optimistic, and, we'll just play it by ear, I guess, on that. And I love the jokes and the memes that came out. If Ryan Day was born on third base, they've got the picture of Harbaugh rocking Sherrone Moore like a baby and setting him down on home plate. So your move, bro.
I think one of my questions is basically, is Sherrone Moore the best that Michigan could do in terms of getting the head coach? And right now, I could be convinced that he is, because I do wonder how attractive the job is right now until coaches know exactly what's going to happen at Michigan with the NCAA. But I also think that Sherrone Moore can improve the recruiting over Jim Harbaugh. I think that's a distinct possibility. The last 3 years, I think Michigan has been on average the 13th ranked class in the nation. And over Jim Harbaugh's first 4 years, they only had one class that was worse than 13th, or only one class outside of the top 10. And that was 2018 with the number 22 class for some reason. But the 23 class was 17th. I don't know exactly where the 24 class ended up. I think somewhere outside of the top 10. But I think Sherrone Moore can increase those, provided that there are not significant sanctions and provided that they're also winning. I know everybody talks about how much they love them in terms of the people inside the program. And I also think this was done to maybe keep some people from leaving. Not that you would hire a coach just to keep a Will Johnson from leaving when you only get him for one more year, or Mason Graham when you only get these guys for one more year. Because frankly, I don't know that there's really if all of the great players that remained at Michigan left, I don't even know if there's enough to call it an exodus. You just call it those 4 guys have left. And so you still have to go get the best guy to do the job. He is a first-time head coach, as long as we're not counting the 4 games that he was a head coach this year, kind of like when Ryan Day in 2019 was a first-time head coach, even though he had 3 games of head coaching experience. But earlier in the week, I went back and looked at like the top 25 programs in the final AP poll, and 10 of those guys were the head coach of 10 of those programs. That was their first head coaching job. So they had been assistant coaches before they took over, and they weren't all internal hires or anything like that, but there was their first head coaching job. So, I don't think there's a tremendous issue with Michigan hiring an assistant coach. Ohio State did it. Oklahoma's done it the last 2 times. Georgia's done it the last 2 times, and it's worked out exceptionally well for them. So, the idea that you have to go get some established head coach, I don't think that's true. I just think you have to find the right guy, and for Michigan, also the guy willing to take the job at this point that you have confidence in, that and I think that's a very short list for Michigan.
I do want to add to Tony's point, though, that when Sherrone was head coaching at Michigan, Jim Harbaugh was there every day but game day. The Ryan Day time, I believe Urban was like, we're just going to turn off your code at the Woody and we'll see you after the TCU game or whatever that was. And
Corey Dennis will explain to you what's happening over the dinner table.
Right. That's right. So
that's how you'll find out.
I'm not trying to.
He will bring you a device that you will plug into your computer and you can watch practice.
I'm not trying to diminish, what Sherrone was able to do. I mean, I think, certainly in the Ohio State game, he called a much more aggressive game. He played to win the game, and, Ohio State played the game. But it's going to be a lot different when you're not going to have the established name face of Jim Harbaugh there 6 days a week at Schembechler Hall going through it. So, I think there are some differences there. And when the suspension came out and how it was put in there of, oh, well, you can do everything. You can buy the groceries. You can put the groceries away. You can do the mise en place. You can do all of this stuff, but you can't eat the food versus, you're just out. I'll be interested. I mean, I'm not trying to play to an audience and be like, well, Sherrone Moore is at Michigan, so therefore Sherrone Moore is bad. I'm looking at this objectively, and it's like I don't know. I don't know what this product is going to look like, and this upcoming Michigan schedule is going to test that team unlike it has been tested in previous seasons, just with Michigan playing real out-of-conference opponents. Yes, Ohio State not necessarily playing great ones this year, but playing real, at least something that's better than Manny, Mo, and Jack. And then the way that the Big Ten schedule goes, especially with the lack of divisions moving forward.
But at least they hired somebody who knows what it's like to be under the thumb of the NCAA and knows how to handle a suspension should another one come along. He's got that kind of experience. And if you have a chance to hire somebody who's already been suspended for NCAA infractions, I think you have to do it.
So on his LinkedIn, does he have, where he puts your job skills, suspension experience, and then he's going to get a lot of spam from auto companies looking for him to sit there, and because he's worked on suspensions and everything else and alignments. All right, I'll show myself out.
And personal experience with suspensions as well for Sherrone. So, yeah, I think it'd be foolish for anyone to say that they know how it's going to turn out. So when Kevin says, I don't know how it's going to turn out, nobody knows how it's going to turn out. And I think the best guess is that Michigan's going to be winning 9 or 10 games. That would be my guess because it's a tougher conference. It's a difficult job to maintain what Harbaugh's done the last 3 years. And you put those two things together. Now, I tend to do what Tony does is in these situations say, okay, what does history tell us? So let's start there. What does history tell us? And we go through all the first-time head coaches, and then we also go through the list of coaches that have been elevated within the program. And it turns out to be much more impressive than you would think, because my default would be, let's go get an experienced, proven coach. But they also have what they consider to be, and I'm not saying this sarcastically completely, that they have a culture that they want to maintain. So they may be under different circumstances firing Jim Harbaugh after 2020, then it's a different decision. But after what they've built with the core that they've built it with, and Sherrone Moore being in the middle of all that, and he must have impressed somebody when there was a 3-game tryout and he was the guy then 6-8 weeks later that was the chosen one to lead them for the 3 toughest and most important games, then that was our indicator.
Yeah, Mark, I do think it's important that when you set the expectations for Michigan, you can't look at these past 3 years as the expectations for Sherrone Moore. I think you have to look back to the BCS era. And when I say BCS, that means before Connor Stallions. So you look back to what they would do before Connor Stallions, and that's 9 wins, 3 losses a year.
I'm dead with the BCS comment right there. I'm just I can't top that. I should just leave right now. Tony has won the episode.
This Michigan transfer portal, obviously, this could be another reason why they went with Sherrone Moore. I'm not thinking it's number 1, 2, or 3 on the list, but maybe it's number 7 on the list that we keep this coaching staff intact, or at least the lead guy is a main core member, and we will avoid the pitfalls that have faced Alabama and Washington in particular, and cascaded down from there at Arizona and San Jose State, because we've seen nobody out of the Michigan contingent in the portal other than maybe a backup defensive tackle.
No, but everybody is Twitter sleuthing and Insta sleuthing and seeing who's following who on there, and everybody's got one of their D tackles, one of their starting D tackles with 4 feet out the door and everything else. So we'll kind of see, because I think that people are going to be like, okay, well, we know that obviously Jim Harbaugh's leaving, and okay, it sounds like Jesse Minter's leaving, but then once the strength coach leaves, I don't think anybody's that concerned about Jay Harbaugh leaving at tight ends, but it still could trickle down, and you don't know, and Michigan still does have a group of sophomores that are pretty good. I mean, I hate to say that for the benefit of all the Ohio State fans here, but they still have some solid dudes that are on that roster. And to Mark's point, and I mentioned it even earlier in the show, yeah, you do hire internally if you feel that is the best you can do, or the best option to try and keep the mass exodus or the exodus from occurring. But it's funny, there's a Twitter account out there called Message Board Geniuses, and they take screenshots of message boards from across the nation in college football, and there was already a Michigan fan, and I can't do the due diligence to know if they're really a fan or if they're a plant or whatever, and they're all like, Sherrone just needs to hurry up and bomb out, because we're going to fall further and further behind everybody else until we can go and do a real external search. And I was like, damn, that took less than a week. That took less than a week to get to that point. So I guess the higher the expectations, the deeper the deeper the pit of despair that awaits.